So Brian Tyler, I think a lot of people were surprised by the massive success at the box office and also with critics for Crazy Rich Asians. What do you attribute the, overwhelming popularity of this movie to?
I you know we all loved the film when we were making it, but we really didn't know that it would take like that. We were hoping, but I think there's a universal kind of uh, a number of universal themes in it that I think work in terms of across the board. Um, the idea of family, the idea of identity, and and I think at its core, it was really an emotionally honest movie, and it's something I think everyone can relate to.
Right.
I think it was really well done too. I mean, John knocked it out of the park, cast it right. It's just like one of those things. Everything lined up. Kevin Kwan's story and Constance and Henry and Gemma and the whole cast. It really was one of those things. It's kind of like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. And it's also very funny too, which I think helps. Um,
It's very funny. You're right.
you mentioned these themes about identity and family, so I wonder if you could talk a bit about how in your music you sought to express that.
You know, the the way the film was kind of it was one thing. I read the script and I read the books and I loved them. And but the way John shot it and the way he approached the family aspects of it and kind of the yearning of a person that's on the outside of looking in, the kind of the rejected person that is kind of proving themselves. That's something that we can all relate to. And so musically, it had to really at its core be emotional.
Mhm.
It needed to be kind of uh, have a have the feeling of like a saga of um, like ancestry in a way. And so the themes I wrote were really kind of based in a feel of melody. There's almost like of music from an older era, and the approach wasn't to do something that was like like a modern romantic comedy. The approach was to do music that was out of time. That it could have been, we could have recorded this entire score in 1940.
Mhm.
Classic strings, classic melodies, and then of course for the big fun stuff, like you were saying, it's big band jazz that I wrote, which is really unusual to write score music that is big band jazz. Typically, in a movie like Crazy Rich Asians or any studio film that has kind of a harkening back to big band and jazz, is that they'll go and get needle drops for those pieces that are pre-existing, Benny Goodman or whoever it is, and use those. But John was very adamant. He wanted a score that held together like thematically, for everything from the romantic themes to the family themes that were done on strings and orchestra and classic in that way, but then also for the big fun raucous wild themes, that were on big band jazz. He wanted those melodies to cross over instead of kind of going from an album or a song from 1952 to a modern one. He kind of wanted to tie together. So it's a very unusual and unique situation, something that I was very happy to be challenged with.
There's another great aspect to this film, which is the specificity of the culture that you're seeing. I mean, it gives us a real inside look into Asian culture and Singapore and all that stuff. Was
Right.
that an influence on your music as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of it also not just being Asian culture, but it's kind of very, these two very specific things with the Singaporean culture, which is really a blending of a lot of they themselves being mostly immigrants that came in, and a lot of different Asian cultures. There's which a lot of the subject matter too. They're educated in English speaking countries, and English is of course the first language, but then you also have this Asian American, for the main character is Asian American, being put into this world of Singapore with fish out of water story. So So in a sense, it really was um, uh, bringing all those kind of Western ideas and her whole world into this other world. So it was interesting to blend these two things. In fact, there were times where I was doing things I never thought I would do, which were I wrote a number of big band jazz pieces that have that kind of classic. It's really jazz as an American art form that has gone global, but at the same time we were using Singaporean and some Chinese instruments within the jazz music, and it's not something that's often done, where you have Asian flutes playing alongside saxophone solos. So it was something on the outset we thought, well, can we pull this off? What's it going to be like? But I think at the end of the day, sometimes those challenges bring the most unique kind of outcomes.
So then give us a little bit of a sense of the how you get past those challenges, the
Yeah.
kind of trial and error that you have to go through as you're writing this music in order to, blend all those elements into a whole.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll tell you what, my process on this was I saw the movie with John in terms of the first cut, and okay, and I do this all the time. Go into an editing room. It's you kind of know you're getting into a gig, and it's a process of kind of you're in work mode. Well, when I saw the first cut of this movie, I mean, by the end of it, I was in tears, like, and for me for something to hit me that hard, it's happened very rarely. And the thing that I walked away from after that first time I saw it, I had to go away and sit down at this piano actually, and
Where it happened.
as we are, right? And I just felt so much for Constance's character, Rachel, and I kind of was thinking about my family and the struggles of different kinds of relationships and challenges in life, and her story was so kind of encapsulated so much of the human condition. It just really affected me. So I sat down and I had to write her theme and the central theme of the movie, which was something that needed to be universal and spoke to the honesty of the human experience. And it was for going in thinking this is going to be a romantic comedy. This is going to be a lot of fun. That's kind of on the outset what I'm thinking about before I see the movie for the first time, and coming out kind of emotionally like bowled over. I actually went to that first, and that's where I started. That was my starting point. So the main theme, the ba da da, that really carries throughout the movie was the first thing. Then I went back and started writing all the fun, crazy, wild jazz stuff down the line after I established the emotional and kind of the core of the film.
Mhm. You mentioned wanting to write a score that was timeless, something that could have been heard in the 40s or 50s. So I wonder, I mean, were there composers that you looked to from that era as a specific inspiration?
There's kind of too many to name in a sense. But yeah, the classic. I kind of started. I had to set parameters, so I really looked from like the 30s, some of the 30s, but it was kind of centered around 40s and 50s, and in terms of also the so you have all the jazz greats, and that goes from big band, there's drummers even down to Buddy Rich and so it was kind of specific. Different different orchestras used more woodwinds. Different orchestras used more of like Dizzy used trumpet solos, and there all of these things. There's trumpet solos. There's flute solos. There's and also the idea of not just having a big band, but also having a string section support the big band, which wasn't something that was always done, gave it that sheen that is kind of crazy rich Asians. Score wise, of course, later down the road, Maurice Jarre wrote so like Dr. Zhivago and scores like that. That's kind of in terms of the romantic angle and the family angle. I was looking at scores that had a lot of weight. They also go back to Leonard Bernstein and anyway. So there was kind of this whole classic mid-century music goal, and in fact, not only was it me looking at the styles of that music, which I love, but it was also the way we recorded it. I conducted the orchestra live, and everyone in a room, the kind of old school style, used old mics. All my mics are still set up in the studio over here, like these old mics from the 40s and Neumanns and everything like that. And we wanted to make it literally that we could have taken a time machine and recorded the score and written the score and finished it in the exact same way. If it was 1945 or 52 or whatever it was, we wanted to have that feel that, like you were saying, was out of time, and didn't just say 2018 and then when you see it in 10 years, you think, oh, that was a 2018 archive. We wanted to be a story that encapsulated more.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, it sort of made me think like, yeah, back in the day, this was probably something that Vincent Minnelli or George Cukor would have directed. So it kind of makes me want to look at the movie again in that vein.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It has that kind of it has that feel, and it jumps off the screen in a way that feels very much even like the title. It's like very technicolor and the way John shoots and the cinematography is, it's filmed almost like a musical. Yeah. And in that way, I was looking at West Side Story and things like that. So it has a feel that it wasn't like we were doing something that was counter to what was filmed to try to say something. It was actually something that felt very natural to the film, which at first was something that, a studio from the outside looking in, before they saw the film, John and I knew what we wanted to do with the music. But of course, I think probably, they were thinking, totally makes sense, but it'll be rom-com, modern, maybe some good modern guitars, and kind of make it like a score that sounded like production that would be like in the pop side. But they hadn't yet seen the film, and so we were saying, hey, we need an orchestra and we need a big band and all this, and they're thinking like, wait, what? But to their credit, Warner Brothers got behind it and said, okay, if you guys think that's what it should be, we'll support you. So that was great.
I'm glad they did.
Yeah,
it shows in the film.
Yeah.
You're a two-time Emmy nominee. What has that recognition meant for you in your career?
It's always great. Emmys or any BAFTA, any of that stuff is fantastic, from the sense of it's always a surprise in the morning. When you wake up and you get the phone call saying, "Hey, you're nominated." It's not why I do this. This is a lifelong passion of mine, but it's always nice when you get recognized. It's certainly something fun to kind of reflect on, that people are enjoying it, of your peers especially.
Well, I bring it up, and I should mention also you've got a couple of BAFTA nominations as well. I bring it up because we're talking about this film in terms of potential Oscar nominations, and so I wonder, was that even in the purview when you guys were working on this film at all? Are you surprised by that kind of recognition?
Look, I'm surprised that kind of in the sense that people recognize it, I think, for what it is, which is great. Like I was saying, the first time I saw the film and was working on it, to me, I was thinking, boy, I really hope that there's eyes that are put on this movie, that it's given a chance, because it was such a passion project, and we intentionally wanted to bring it to the big screen when there was a streaming deal that was much more lucrative and all that. But we felt this was John especially, and this was an important story to tell and get it on the big screen. And I felt that John did such a great job with the movie. I wanted to step up to the plate and really deliver something that was worthy, and the music became more and more part of how he edited the film too. Around the music, there's a sequence where Rachel's alone, and and it's in that last part of the movie where it's really really heartbreaking, and he just let the music play, which is kind of a old classic way to do things, but you don't find it very much anymore. Things are really quick cutty now. So the fact that I think that people really took to it and critics loved it and all that, I felt that the movie deserved it. But I when you're working on something that you love, you almost guard yourself against that kind of thing, because it becomes very personal to you, and so I was ecstatic when it came out and people took to it, and now that people are talking about it in the awards discussion, for sure.
Well, I think all the effort you guys put into it certainly shows in the finished film. Brian Tyler, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Right on.